Hi and welcome to our virtual opening at the 17th Architectural International Exhibition in Venice. We are at the Slovenian Pavilion with our curators and commissioner. Our exhibition focuses on Cooperative Center, 70 years of cooperative centers as social infrastructure in Slovenia. Our exhibition is highlighting various dimensions of this project and constructing cooperative center in the given historical and actual context. With the curators, we will talk about a bit about the historical context, today events, and also, of course, about the exhibition. But we are not only our exhibition is not only about curators and commissioner. We are a bigger group, so I would like to present also our group, which consisted of Matevž Čelik, who is the commissioner of the exhibition, and he's sitting right here, and Blaž, Babnik, Romaniuk, Martina, Malešič, Rastko, Pečar, and me. We are the curators of the exhibition. But our bigger collective is consisted of Aljaž Vesel and Anja Delbelo, and they are graphic designers. Our scientific advisor Damir Josipovic, our photographer Jana Josif. We have also video, which was directed by Vid Heinšek. And on the exhibition, we have architectural models that was made by Nuša Jurković and Samo Kralj. We have also a catalog that is has also a couple of tags by the curators and by historical content by Neža Čebron-Lipovec, Aidan Cerar, Zdenko Čepić, and infographics by our designers. So thank you all for coming, and thank you our team for helping us make this exhibition. So first question is, of course, regarding what is a cooperative center, what do they represent, and how this Yugoslav project that was made in such a big scale that we could present it here in the Venice Biennale. So Martina will say a few words about this. Thank you.
So our main topic is Cooperative Center. What is actually Cooperative Center? This is a multi-purpose building, typology, which was actually known before from the 19th century onwards, but in this case it consisted also of different, not only educational and cultural functions, but also agriculture was important part of it. The building, the huge construction of cooperative centers were started in 1947, where the proclamation was put on in December 1947 as a huge pan-Yugoslav project which plans thousands of cooperative centers all around Yugoslavia. It was organizationally and systematically put on, so everything was planned from the process of construction, preparing the type plans to execution itself. And then each republic took over, organized their own institutions who then led forward the building. But anyhow, this process was from two directions, from this top-down, where everything was determined, and on the other side, from bottom-up, where execution was actually realized by the communities itself. Type plans were usually designed by engineers, by architects, by different architects known in this period, active in this period, and they were working on this project beside also projects for other representational buildings, for important buildings of the period, and on the other side, of course, also regarding modernization of the countryside. This was actually the main aim of the project. So cooperative centers were started as as a tool, as a model, how to enhance cooperatives themselves, how to strengthen collectivization of agriculture, and on the other side also how to enable progress in the field of culture in villages all around the country.
So this was not, as you said, only a Slovenian project, but it was a bigger project in the whole Yugoslavia. So maybe you could just elaborate how was this research done in Slovenia, because this is a pioneer research, and what was the material that we've used in our research?
Yes, as you said, so Yugoslavian project, and we came on top of different researches that were already made in different republics of ex-Yugoslavia. We read few studies regarding cooperative centers in Serbia, in Croatia, but in Slovenia, anyhow, it wasn't researched yet. So with this project, we are making the first, let's say, maybe really pioneer overview of the construction. There were some studies regarding some local communities or some regional centers, but not as a whole, as the project on the Slovenian level. The research went on different ways. We were leafing through different publications, and then archives, of course. We found many plans designed as a base for elaborating type plans in archives of Republic of Slovenia, in different local archives. We found also a big amount of archive photos from Museum of Contemporary History of Slovenia, and on the other side also, of course, our main research methodology was also field work. So we traveled all around Slovenia and trying to elaborate the list of realized cooperative centers as much as possible.
Thank you. So we are now sitting in the Slovenian pavilion in Arsenale, and our viewers had the opportunity to see a bit of glimpses of the pavilion beforehand. So maybe Blaž, you could elaborate a bit more about the pavilion. What are the key elements and what could be seen here at the exhibition?
So cooperative centers are, in a sense, a public building in par excellence. They are owned by the public, used by the public. It's not so much as, let's say, library galleries that are administered and controlled access. It's really, in a sense, a really public building. What we wanted to do in the exhibition space is also to bring some of this, not the only feeling, but logic that this is really open space that is accessible, understandable, open to all, and we wanted to show that by using few elements that are strong storytelling elements. We focused on not doing an exhibition that would be a typical exhibition that you have posters, you read through in a linear way, but an exhibition that somehow brings people together, that it's not linear, you can start from different parts of the exhibition, and that you never face back to one another, but face to face, in a sense, representing the public space, the forum that you do, that you meet people, that you discuss, and somehow enable the fact that we have to live together, that we have to agree on things. So this is, in a sense, represented by this huge table behind us that shows this public arena where we discuss things, and this is really the element of coming together. What we wanted also to show, this, what Martina mentioned, the scope and the scale of the project, the huge ambition is represented by this ceiling above us that shows really the ambition of this project to build more than 500 cooperative centers in Slovenia. in a sense, not only does it show the scale of the project, but it also brings different atmosphere to this place. So it's not just a hollow, big space in this exhibition, huge exhibition space, but you get a sort of a feeling of interior space using wood that somehow brings feelings that things are more common, that you are used to, that the scale is something that is pleasant. So in a sense, it's more inviting. We are inviting people in, come and see. The other gesture or act is the act of opening, such as public space that should be open to everyone, that should invite, is that the fact that we took the space of the pavilion of Arsenale, we cut out a big hole to show this window that brings in light, brings in views, and makes it possible for viewers to view outside as well. And we took this shape as sort of a symbol and a connecting block that connects the design of the cooperative centers with the design or the state of this exhibition space. So we use the same element to show that the connection between these elements, and of course that cooperative centers were always site-specific. They, not only in sense of space, but also communities, they designed the buildings themselves. They took in consideration what they need, what kind of building they need, what the scale is, and what they are capable of building. So this genius loci is also connected to how we designed the exhibition. So we took this shape, repeated it, transformed it, reshaped it. So it's always the same logic of how you design a space by respecting the space, the communities, and so basing on what's there. Another very strong building block is storytelling. It's the video that we cannot see in the moment, but it's opportunity or the best media that we chose that shows the stories not only of what's happening now, but what is the history of the cooperative centers, and of course what is the future. So these few building blocks, and of course the scale of the project through infographics that get this 3D shape is something that we want to, in a short and somehow powerful way, show the scale and the ambition of this project.
Thank you, Blaž. I think this is a great ending for Rastko, because I wanted to ask you, how were this information that also Blaž just mentioned, that are also key elements of the exhibition and also in the infographics in catalog, how were they gathered? Which are these key things that were gathering? Is this the scale? Were these the architects? What was the methodology behind it? Maybe if you could, in a few words, describe this.
Yeah, we started by researching historical material, because the project itself was very well documented. Here I would just mention there was a dedicated newspaper that was issued while the project was being organized and implemented, and it had a great propagandistic role, but also informing local building committees or even educating them about how to properly organize the whole process that included from gathering or producing materials such as wood, construction wood, and even baking bricks to disseminating the information about how other construction yards are functioning. Some of them were lagging behind, some of them were very well managed and very productive. We gathered also or accessed a lot of publicly available information, such as statistics, to get the insight of what's the property structure and usage of these buildings now. But maybe the most fulfilling part, at least for me personally, was the actual users or people connected with these structures. During our fieldwork, we contacted or met a lot of descendants of the people who were involved in the planning and construction, but also people who are connected with cooperative centers, such as public officials or cultural workers, everything to janitors and consumers of culture. And then, yeah, we basically, okay, tle bi se ustavil. Sem zaključil.
Okay, so yeah, so this, as you said, all these consumers that are still there today, so maybe Matevž, you could elaborate a bit and follow up on this. What is the importance of the interior public space today, not only cooperative center, but in general, and what, especially regarding to Slovenia, because Slovenia is very geographically diverse. It has, and cooperative centers are in small towns, villages, and how are these part of the bigger infrastructure and architectural infrastructure on one hand and social infrastructures on the other hand, maybe?
Well, as Zygmunt Bauman would say, these are the urban commons. And even though cooperative centers are not institutions, they play a certain institutional role in these settlements and villages and towns where they are placed into. They are places of common rituals, they are places of gathering, they connect people. And it is interesting to look back and see how they were created. They came as part of kolkhoz agricultural policies, which were not successful, but on the other hand, the cooperative centers proved successful as cultural transformers. They brought cultural venues to villages, they brought cinema halls, they brought theater halls, they brought libraries, shops in some cases, spaces for political activities. So they transformed communities. And today, when we stand in front of new challenges as society, we can think again how they could be reused again as cultural transformers, because there is a need for a new cultural transformations in order that we can face the challenges that could be local in the villages where these cooperative centers stand, and we know that there is depopulation, the villages are getting empty, there is, and of course global problems such as climate change and environmental issues.
Thank you. So maybe if I go from this back to Martina, because I would like to talk about a bit more about the architectural part of the building. You have already mentioned they have some sort of predetermined, there is architectural typology behind them, even though that we see them maybe as ordinary buildings, something that maybe we don't even notice when we are passing them by in everyday life, but they do have special typologies. And the fascinating thing behind it is, as you are also writing in your article in the catalog, is how this huge project was connected with, on one hand, on the users, and in the other hand, with architecture, building institute, the type plans that were disseminated across. So maybe if you could speak a bit more about this part and which were the architects behind them.
Yes, our statement is actually that Cooperative Center was an and still is an architectural project. And well, from the beginning onwards, it was really well thought through project. And really architects were involved from the beginning, from the 1947 onwards. And they were especially around Ministry of Construction, around the Institute of Building. All of the architects employed there, such as France Tomažič, Stanko Rorman, Herman Hus, Emil Medvešček, so the main, the leading architects from the interwar period and also post-war were in charge for designing these type plans, but they were also thinking about not only the organizational scheme, the floor plans of the facades, of the surrounding of the cooperative center, but one of their main concerns was also how to include this new center in the old village and how to construct actually a new place, a new center around this new cooperative center. So those were all of the architects working on, but not only them, especially dealing with urban planning design of new cooperative centers were the topic of Edvard Ravnikar. For example, we have a few of his ideas, of his plans, included also at the exhibition in the form of the models on our table, also in the catalog. So he was the one that was working on this topic also with his students. And on the other side, also Jože Plečnik. At his seminar, we found at the Faculty of Architecture many plans as a student's work, how to elaborate this new cooperative center. As we mentioned about, as we mentioned before, so cooperative center in its sense is actually an old typology from Maison du Peuple in Brussels onwards. So this is something that is in the history of at least European architecture from 19th century on. But cooperative center adds different parts. So this is something that is not meant for urban places, for the cities, for industrial centers, but for countryside, for villages, for the outskirts of the cities. Then the second additional content, let's say, is this mixture of functions. So it's not only culture, social place, but it was also a place meant for agriculture activities. So storages for corp, for farming facilities, of course collective ones was part of this. And then the third one that we especially stressed was this interesting combination of the process that we already mentioned, of those two principles from top down to bottom up. So yes, this is something that we started with, but anyhow, after 70 years, we still can see that with all of those changes, so those centers coming from collectivization of agriculture to being really cultural and social hubs of towns, villages, so the functions actually were changing, but in those 70 years, those places are still in use. So maybe this is the most important part of this architectural project, that this is architecture which is resilient and adaptable. And as Matevž mentioned before, if we are thinking about public space that should follow and adapt to all of the new challenges that we have in front of us, we think that this is the place that could be, because we really could see that through all of those 70 years, with changing different conditions, those places were in use and were used by communities.
But still, it was a very well thought of project. If you think about 500, more than 500 people, cooperative center that were planned, and more than 300 that were executed, and only in a few years. So, and you mentioned type plans, but in the research there were only a few cooperative centers that followed type plans exactly. So it was sort of an educational project also. So maybe if you could only say a few words, how were they built? What was the organization behind it? Did they follow project? How was this possible in a few years to erect more than 300 buildings that are quite big, more than some of them are more than 1,000 square meters large. So how was this possible?
Well, I think that one of the first reasons is, of course, this will to change something and to really bring the progress to the villages. It's well, I think that maybe the biggest reason behind this success is really the combination of nice organized structure and then on the other side of motivated public in the form of communities and inhabitants of the villages. So as you said, time plans were there. They were designed by architects, well thought through and so on. But yes, on the other side, they were following them a little bit, but not as a whole. Because we can see we have different type plans who are more classical, more conservative ones, and the other really modernist, interesting ones with different treatment of the facades, with different elements of regional vernacular architecture and so on. But yes, the executed ones were not as the drawn ones. So communities change a lot. The plans, they were, of course, replacing some elements that they couldn't elaborate or. But yes, on the other side, they were adding some other element because. So we have to imagine this constructing site. You have volunteers. You have villagers, you have the members of the youngsters, you have also AFG, Anti-Fascist Association of Women, so all of them coming together to this place. There were also craftsmen like carpenters and masons who were assisting to the construction site, but they were also educating a new generation of the craftsmen that stayed in villages and working on other projects for renovation or cooperative centers. So it was the construction site itself. It wasn't meant only for constructing the very cooperative center, but also to really prepare foundations for all of the other constructions all around. And if we are talking also about cultural activities, they weren't implemented afterwards in the cooperative centers that were already finished, but they were there on the construction site. Theatrical performances, concerts, dancers, this was part of the construction site. It's of course part of motivation to build the new home.
And if I just may add something, actually one of the slogans was, we are building a cooperative center, but the cooperative center is building us as a community. And I think that's one of the, if not the strongest part of this project, is that the state said we need this to modernize the agriculture, to improve quality of life in the countryside. But the most important part of this project was let the community say what they need and how they need it. Of course, there was some sort of a structure that was given. You have type plans. This is the program that should be implemented. But at the end, it was on the communities to decide on their own where and how they will build it. And this is actually what we found out also in fieldwork, that this somehow consciousness that this was built by community for community still remains after 70 years. Even if the generations are not alive anymore, it's still present in the consciousness that this was built by us for us and will remain so. So I think that this is actually the strongest part of the project itself.
Yes, and also what you've mentioned, that this is a community center, so a few things were rebuilt, rearranged, adapted, and so on during the years. But still, it was always when community centers, as you mentioned, are different. Some are under local authorities, are very well managed today, and some are under more self-organized communities, we could say, and some are privatized, unfortunately. So maybe Blaž, if you could say more about this use today, and still not, and when I say today, I don't mean actually today, because today the use is more controlled than it was in any given time in the history because of the epidemic. And this is also one part that is present in our project, that it was made in the epidemic, and even in the times in the late 40s, which were not maybe the most liberal times of all, but the use of cooperative centers was not so much in the interior space, but not so much organized as today. So maybe if you could say what is the importance of this interior space, and also how was it affected with the epidemics?
So in a sense, what we found out is that the cooperative centers as a network, and each building in itself functions as a sort of a social infrastructure. It's a very simple idea or a premise that you have a heated interior space that has some basic facilities, just like toilets, running water, lights, storage facilities, scale specific. And this just banal, in a certain sense, material aspects of this project is what makes the framework possible to function in different times. So during the epidemic, of course, the measures to control the epidemic changed the way we use space in itself. It changed the relations, personal relations between us. Private space somehow got expanded. And of course it affected use of interior public space a lot, of course. Public spaces such as libraries, galleries, museums, theaters, cinemas, everything was closed. And now, we found that it cannot last. It only got worse the longer the measures were in place. And of course, these spaces, these a bit over-dimensioned spaces, still offered communities new conditions to operate regardless of these measures. So the town halls, the community meetings could be housed in these theaters that were supposed to be used for plays and so on, but it offered a lot of space to get basic stuff done, to agree on stuff, and to allow communities to organize. Of course, in the time of pandemic, organizing, discussing was even more important because we were all in sort of a fog that we couldn't understand how we will function in the following days, weeks, and so on. And it showed that this basic infrastructure, this really space with bricks and appliances offers communities, if they have the autonomy to use this space. And what we found out that during the years, the element of self-organizing, of autonomously using this space was actually crucial and offered a chance that through generations, this space was used differently. And what we also discussed with people using them for years and years, that one generation will use this space really intensively. It will be lively, it will be center not only of local communities, but wider. I mean, not in regional, but statewide spots became cultural significant. But when generations change, the needs and the desires change, and perhaps a certain cooperative center can fall out of grace and can be used a bit less, but it's still used, it's still maintained. In the element of care, I think it's crucial, that this is ours, we use it, but not ours now, but it will be for our the next generations as well. So continuous care through 70 years is what keeps this infrastructure going and offers possible solutions when things get tough and new measures arrive.
And this is also connected with the concept of spatial justice that you are also mentioning in your text in the catalog. You focused on the more urbanistic side of the project also, so maybe you could explain how this cooperative center, how this interior public space worked, because it was the relationships and relations between cities were different in those times. So what was this role of the cooperative center?
Yeah, spatial equity was in the heart of the project of building the whole network of cooperative centers, because the aim was to improve quality of life in remote spaces. Places. So each cooperative center had a really important structural role, not only to bring cultural facilities, but in the start agricultural facilities, and also basic amenities such as sanitation, functioning toilets, basic infrastructure for agriculture to improve. So each place that that erected their communities cooperative center actually erected an infrastructure that could improve their well-being, and that was the aim of the project in itself. So even remote places have the same opportunities and quality of life that more central spaces can have. And when we come to today, and when there are trends of reducing public spending, of limiting public transport, we can see that accessibility to public facilities, to public amenities, to shops, to post offices, to small doctor offices, to cultural events is essential, because not everyone drives a car, not everyone is similarly able to be part of the community. And for young people, for older people, such places nearby that you can walk or just reach without any assistance is crucial today.
Yes, and this is also actually connected with this fourth part of the exhibition, the video, where there are people also explaining about their connection and their connections and their what are they doing in these cooperative centers around Slovenia. So Rastko, maybe you could say a few words about how this video was done and the field work that is behind it, and what were these different phases of cooperative centers that we have encountered?
As everyone mentioned already, the exhibition itself is very deals with the things that interest us as architects. So the structural relations, the strategic view on the project as a whole, or certain attributes of specific buildings. We wanted to complement this general look with a more, of course, subjective impression, showing the importance of constructing the collective spirit while building the building itself, and also the role of individuals as catalysts to facilitate this process. Of course, this was quite difficult to do due to the epidemic, especially also because a lot of people that we wanted to speak with were elderly people who are especially were threatened by the virus. But we still manage by being responsive to the epidemiological situation. We still manage to shoot some interviews and even to get a glimpse of the everyday life of these buildings. The video was done by Vid Heinschek, who unfortunately caught the coronavirus. So he cannot be here with us, but he's used to, or he has this certain sensibility towards this rural milieux or peripheric environments in physical and other sense, and he's quite good with finding characters that are situated in this environment but still transcend it and offer a general or even let's say universal point of view. So the film, it's about 20 minutes long, and it's an impression about the past of these buildings and their current use, and the importance for the communities that use them.
Mm-hmm. Martina, you also with the director, there were some shots that were in Slovenian archive, and they are used in the video. So maybe you were mentioning already that it was a very well also advertised video. It used a lot of propaganda, and also here the propaganda was used in this video. And maybe you could just explain what sort of video or film or propaganda was this? What kind of what do we see?
Well, the whole project has. Well, we mentioned before that it was really well thought through, and that the whole system, not only organizational or the part of the project itself, but also, yes, the idea of communication, of propaganda was really strong, with different medias, with photographies and with movies. And we found a really nice collection of those archival footages. Well, the biggest one is actually this Agitka, so an agitational movie called Let's Build Cooperative Centers. It was done by director Ernest Adamic, so one of the most active directors of the period. And it was really meant to be shown in different villages before or after movie projections, to motivate, to agitate for building a new cooperative centers. And beside this, there were also small clips in Filmski obzornik, in important news in the form of videos that were also part of these movie projections, and they were also following the new steps in the process of constructing of the centers. So it was everything really well organized and prepared in the, of course, first 2 years of construction, in 47, 48, maybe also 49, and then after in Forum Bureau, the projects somehow diminished. I would just like to add to Rastko's explanation of video, that video is maybe the most fragile part of our project, the part that was the most threatened by Corona, with our director, who unfortunately stayed at home, but also with the not content but the form of video itself. The idea was really to include the happenings of this in these cooperative centers in the video, and then Vid decided to replace those happenings with stories, and I think that he made great job, but he of course had a struggle how to replace these happenings, and he really diligently and nicely put together everything with these archival footages. And one thing that is really important, at least in my opinion, is that he somehow succeeded in make this progress from the beginning of the construction till today. And he ends the story with a special case of cooperative centers, which is new building of cooperative center. We came across in one case, in one village in Goriška Brda in Koljo, where they had an old cooperative center which was too big, and they demolished it, and they started to build a new one only a few years ago, in the same way as 70 years ago, with voluntary work and with shock work. And at the end, the president of this village community says something really important, that as long as he is going to be the president, this center is going to be open and accessible to everyone, because everyone contributed to its construction and they deserve it.
Thank you. Yes, and the central question of the Biennale is how will we live together? So to close up and sum up our conversation in the Slovenian pavilion, we should look at the whole Biennale and on this format of big exhibition, not only architecture but also art exhibition that are now a bit threatened and organized in different circumstances. I would like to ask you, Matevž, as you're the commissioner of the exhibition, how do you see the future of these exhibitions? There was a moment in this past year when the Curator Collective was established, and maybe you should say a few words about this, and what were the ideas behind it? How did the epidemic and the coronavirus change the thought about this exhibition format?
Well, I think there are many things that were talked about in many different events or fields that happened during this time, and maybe I can repeat them, how the pandemic connected us more, how it made us function more as a community, even though we were physically disconnected. In a way, we had time to think more about what we do and to discuss more among each other. And I think it also connected architectural community here at the Biennale more than we thought. Before the pandemic, we saw the inflation of biennales and triennales and these events, and the question of what is the role of this event is constantly present. And I think that the pandemic has slowed the pace of this event down, and moved it from being a temporary, short, performative event into something that is a longer, long-lasting process. And I think that this is the future of these events, to become more permanent processes that are not focused only on a few days when we sit under the lights and show our work. But it is a process of long-lasting discussion that should help us transform the society. That's, I think, is the main change that will happen in the world of biennales in the future.
Thank you. Well, for the end, I would just like to invite you next Thursday afternoon. We will also have another presentation in Ljubljana in Museum of Architecture and Design where we will speak more about the catalog, and we will be joined also with our graphic designers and writers. At the end, but not least, of course, we would like to thank our producers, Museum of Architecture and Design, and Nicola Pongradz, which was a big help with our pavilion. Thank you so much. Thank you.